to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And was that game worth a postponement or what? I'm exhausted, which I'm sure many of you guys are as well. But man, was that game not worth it? A lot of quality sound bites from Jim Curtin from this game. And a couple of them I'm sure you guys have heard or seen on social media. And I'll play them here if you guys haven't yet. But just like the last episode, no news, just vibes, because isn't that what Leagues Cup is all about? The vibes. Goalkeepers taking penalties. A ton of games going into penalties. Club America thinking they won against Nashville just for them to say, you know, the goalie was off his line. We take the penalty. Nashville scores. Then Club America get their penalty saved. Chaos in the round of 16 of Leagues Cup. And this is exactly what MLS wanted, and this is not what Liga MX wanted. But man, are you guys enjoying this tournament or what? I'm not. There have been moments in this game, in this tournament, that have made me say, why are we doing this? You guys heard me last episode. It feels like it's the US Open Cup, and thank goodness New England lose against Queretaro. And now the Union get to set up a rematch. 2 times in the last 16 days, these two teams will have played each other. Insane. But at least it ain't New England, right? At least it's a different opponent. This is what Leagues Cup wanted. They wanted MLS teams and Liga MX teams playing against each other. And we've seen throughout this tournament, Liga MX teams dropping like flies. But man, what a tournament. What pointless games to potentially lose Daniel Gazdag for a significant amount of time. The minutes keep adding up to the Union players. They keep winning. What's that going to do to them for the rest of the regular season while Cincinnati sits at home and is able to recover? They're not complaining. New England's not going to complain that they got knocked out by Queretaro. But yet, here's the Union. Round of 8 could set up a semifinals match against Inter Miami if Miami takes care of business and beats Charlotte. So, yeah, just vibes this episode. But I want to give a shout out to Grace, Elliot, and Olivia. Finally seeing you guys for the first time since MLS Cup last year. So that was cool to catch up with them and get to interact and leave the stadium and just seeing Elliot and Olivia just be so full of energy. And I'm like, I've got an hour drive back home. How are you guys wide awake? Like, I need that energy driving back home. Meeting up with a listener, Conrad. That was awesome, right? Meeting you guys for the first time in person. You guys that listen to this podcast, that's what it's all about, just making those connections. So, yeah, it was cool before the game and after the game, just meeting up with people. And I do have to give a shout out because, like I said, there's great sound bites we are going to play in this podcast from Jim Curtin. And I've got to give a shout out to all the people that are working so hard in the media covering your Philadelphia Union. Joe Tanzi, Fox Sports, The Gambler / Union Soccer Blog. He does a podcast as well. Matt DeGeorge, Delco Times. Jonathan Tannenwald, The Inquirer. Meg Swanick, The Swan Dive, and she does so many other papers and websites as well. It's too many to keep a hold of. Greg Oldfield, Philadelphia Soccer Now with Matt Ralph, and it seems like hundreds of writers they have for their website. Peter Andrews with Philly Soccer Page, Jimmy King with PSN, Skylar Hoffner, Philadelphia Sports Nation, Mike Barrera and Jose Nunez, and Dave Miller, Across the Pitch, JD Walker, Stream Punk Sports, Kyle and Jillian Almany, The One Team We Agree On, and of course, my boy Andrew Deal, the free kick. I mean, just so many great sound bites we use from this podcast come from those people that I just mentioned that ask great questions to Jim Curtin. And you guys, we're so spoiled with the great coverage that we get for the Philadelphia Union. And of course, you have all the podcasts that, some are doing it weekly, some are doing it multiple times a week. People are grinding away for you guys. And yes, of course, winning helps. But I was so amped up last night in Jim Curtin's press conference. Just great question after great question. And if I could, I would play the whole press conference here in the podcast, but I'm not going to do that. Maybe I should start putting the press conferences up on the YouTube page. I don't know if I'd get in trouble for that or not. I mean, if that's something you guys want, sure, we can try to dabble with it and hope that nobody says anything to us and takes away press credentials. I don't think they would. I think they would give a warning before they did that, but you never know. But if that's something you guys want me to do, to upload the press conferences to the YouTube page along with the goals breakdown, for sure, we can do that. I'm open to whatever you guys want. I'll listen. Suggestions, good or bad. Whatever you guys want, I'm here for you. But man, so many great sound bites in this podcast. And the first one we'll start off here is Jim Curtin absolutely going off on the New York Red Bulls. And he has every right to go off. And this is a soundbite I'm sure you guys have seen Joe Tansey transcribe it and post it on Twitter, which Taylor Twellman stole it without giving credit. And then he later corrected it a few hours later and gave Joe the credit he deserves. Jose Nunez posted the audio from the press conference on Twitter and other social media platforms. And so if you guys haven't heard that yet, this is Jim Curtin calling out the New York Red Bulls.
Troy is a great young coach, and I think he's doing an incredible job with his team. I really do, and I think he deserves to be the head coach of that team. But I will say, this has nothing to do with Troy. I think for a team and a group to be in 21st place, to talk and run their mouths as much as they do on the field, to be beat here 11 times in a row by us is something that, I'm giving bulletin board material, but I've kind of had enough of it. So credit to my guys for sticking together, pushing, winning again, finding ways to win. Proud of them. But for all the stuff they have to deal with on the field, off the ball, nonsense, people coming off the bench and, talking, that bench players that come into the game and talk and run their mouths. It's just strange. And I think it's something that I'm going to address, and I'm going to speak my mind because I'm proud of my group for the way that they do their talking on the field and have now 11 games in a row, almost 5 years against Red Bull.
Man, you can hear Jim Curtin is fired up. He's had it with New York Red Bulls players. Running their mouths. Cheap fouls. And he has every reason to call that stuff out. And I thought it was a little weird seeing how hard the Union celebrated once they tied the game up against the Red Bulls with Nate's header. And now listening to Jim Curtin's comments after the game, who, by the way, reached out to Joe Tansey and meant to say 11 games unbeaten against Red Bull, not 11 straight wins, but Jim's point still stands. It makes sense why the players celebrated so hard when you hear this, because the players and the staff members on the sideline, on the field, are always running their mouths to the Union staffers, to the Union players. And the first person who I thought about when Jim's going on this rant is Drew Yearwood. Because remember last year, away at Red Bull between these two teams, he kicks the ball out of frustration right at one of his fans in the stands. Dude takes a suspension and comes out with this BS apology. Dude cannot control his emotions. And what happens as soon as he gets substituted in, right? Dude was talking non-stop this game. He comes straight into the game and starts getting into it with Jose Martinez. And Jose Martinez is having none of it. And here comes Carlos Cornell, the goalkeeper, comes running from his keeper spot, yapping his jaw at Jose. Andres Reyes, the center back, starts yapping his jaw at New York Red Bulls. Man, this team loves to run their mouth. And it's funny, right? And Jim calls it out. 11 games they have not beat the Union in. 11 games, going on 5 years. They've been knocked out of 4 knockout competitions by the Union since 2018. 4 knockout competitions. Why are you running your mouth? As Kendrick Lamar says, sit down, be humble. And of course, is this going to be bulletin board material for Red Bull players? Absolutely. But good on Jim for speaking his mind. Good for him letting us know how he feels. This is the story from the game. And do I feel like this is going to get lost in the MLS news world because of the Messi talk? Yes, I do. But this should be the story that the New York Red Bulls have not beaten the Union in 11 games. It's going on 5 years. 5 years since the Red Bulls have last beat the Union. That should be the story. Jim Curtin calling out the Red Bulls gets retweeted, gets a quick article put up on MLSsoccer.com. And let's go back to talking about Messi. Let's talk about this home game that Inter Miami has against Charlotte FC and how Miami are potentially 3 games away from winning their first trophy in club history. And Messi. And isn't this great? Messi's the greatest player ever. We know that. But how many more times are you going to shove this down our throats? There are so many more stories MLS could be telling right now from this competition. But it's all Messi. It's all Messi. And I was sitting in the press box with Kyle Almany. And on MLS's website, it says, do you want to become a Messi insider? Right there on the homepage. What? A Messi insider? You click on the link, and it's just nothing but Messi. And it says, give us your email, and you'll never miss the news about Messi. Daily newsletter about Lionel Messi. I mean, this league is simping hard for Messi. I get it. Be proud that you convinced Messi to join MLS. But my goodness, I don't even think the Barcelona fans are this cringeworthy. Like, MLS has taken this to another level. And there's a rant, right? Jim Curtin can go on a rant. I can go on a rant. And I wasn't even planning on calling out Messi and Inter Miami. But just like Jim Curtin's annoyed with New York Red Bulls running their mouth, I'm fed up. I'm tired of Messi getting shoved down our throats. And of course, we all should have expected this to happen, but it's become way too much. They're doing too much. And you kind of get to a point where you just want to mute the word Messi. You want to get rid of the existence of Messi. Yeah, it was cool watching the first 3 games, and now I'm over it. I'm over it how much time they spend talking about Messi. How much Apple TV pushes Messi. I'm over it all. Just like I'm over this Leagues Cup competition. So maybe we don't have to worry about the Union potentially playing into Miami. All they have to do is go out and get knocked out by Queretaro. We'll see what happens. More on that here a little bit later. But going back to Jim Curtin calling out the Red Bulls. Well on him. And it's a credit to him for having his team disciplined, having them keep their emotions in check. And like he always says, his players do their talking on the field. They don't do their talking from the bench as soon as they enter the field. Yeah, we're going to start jawling away. Nah, that's not this team. Yeah, you have Martinez, Kai Wagner running their mouths, but for the most part, this team just sticks to themselves. They point to the scoreboard, and the scoreboard's all that matters. That's pretty embarrassing, right? That Red Bulls, going on 5 years, haven't beat the Union. It's really embarrassing. And as a Red Bull fan, I I would dread every time that I have to watch my team play the Union, because we know these games are always physical. The game was physical between these two teams last night. Referee lost control of this match a bit, I thought, in the second half. A lot of stupid calls given, a lot of calls missed. But that's been this whole tournament summed up. So I can't really blame the referee too much, because that's been the MO, obviously, for this whole tournament, is inexperienced referees getting experience. And there's going to be a lot that you don't agree with in this tournament. And we've seen it. We've seen it plenty. We've seen it a lot against the Union. We saw it last night. So I can't really blame the referees, but man, my goodness. New York Red Bulls. What a joke of a team. From their fans, I mean, I'm not even showing up to away games anymore. I mean, they don't show up to Harrison. So, I mean, I guess credit to the fans that came down from New Jersey last night to try and support their team. And they're probably the same 20, 25 fans that are always filling up Red Bull Arena. Those are diehard supporters that are coming to be disappointed in their team, because that seems like that's all New York Red Bulls can do, is disappoint their fans. We're talking about disappointments, and this is a pretty good segue into them. Not the best first half performance by the Union, in particular Damian Lowe. And we saw the Union come out in a different formation than we've seen from them before. On the graphic, it looked like a 3-3-2-2, but it played out differently than how the graphic showed. You obviously had your wingbacks in Kai Wagner and Nate Harriel. Both of those guys were constantly pushing up high in the attack. And we saw later on in the first half, Nate Harriel was actually pushing up higher than Kai was, because the Union switched back to the diamond with Glesnes playing as your right back, while Nate Harriel's playing as one of your outside shuttlers. And I thought, for players that don't play in those positions, I thought that it worked out well as the half pushed on. We saw lots of chances, 8 shots for the Union in the first half, only 1 shot, 1 target. As this half went on, they were creating chances, having more meaningful possession, and causing issues to New York Red Bulls on the right side of the field. You saw McGlynn and Flock also pushed up a little bit high, while Martinez sat. Gazdag and Kranza were your 2 up front. One would see a lot of Kranza and Gazdag coming deep to collect the ball, which meant Nate Harriel was going to be that outlet pass for the Union, trying to use Nate to get in behind. You saw a lot of spacing issues between the 3 center backs. Like I said, Damian Lowe in particular did not have a great first half. He was chasing the ball all over the place. The midfield was getting overran. And to the Union's credit, like I said, as the half went on, they went back to a version of the 4-4-2 diamond, Glesnes as your right back, and a lot of attacks going down the right side of the field. We would see Glesnes push up in the attacking half of the field. You're overloading that right side, causing confusion for Red Bulls. They weren't sure how to handle it. And the only thing that was missing was a goal by the Union. And they probably should have scored in the first half. They had a couple half chances there by Julian Kranza and Daniel Gazdag, but couldn't get the ball in the back of the net. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, The Union are only down by 1 goal in the half. And I'm thinking Damian Lowe has to be coming off, right? Like, it makes sense to take off Damian Lowe. And there was times that Damian's just getting too high up on the field, as well as Kai Wagner. And I think this is where Jim Curtin deserves credit. And this is why players love playing for him. He's loyal to his players. He switched to, like I said, a different version of the diamond where he doesn't change the personnel that he has on the field. He could have easily have done that. He realized, hey, look, the formation that we started out in is not working. I'm going to trust my guys I have on the field. Just change it up a little bit tactically. And I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan, obviously, for you guys listening to the podcast. I live in Maryland, from Maryland. And we saw this as Orioles fans with Buck Showalter when he was the manager of the club. He would leave his pitchers in longer than they should have been on the mound, and now they're getting roughed up. The Orioles players love playing for Buck because he was loyal to them. He gave them chance after chance. But sometimes that would come back and bite Buck Showalter in the butt. And it could have bit Jim Curtin in the butt last night as well. And to Damian Lowe's credit, he had a much better second half. But again, like I said, Jim Curtin deserves credit for believing in his players, letting them work things out. All right, you guys got yourself in this mess. You guys give up an early goal. Go out there and show me that you can play better than what you just showed the first 20, 25 minutes in this game. And as the first half went on, they improved. The only thing missing, no goal. And Jack Elliott called it after the game a natural Red Bull tendency of pressing high, the Union pressing high. And sometimes you're going to get caught up high on the field when you're pressing up. But again, to the Union's credit, they figured it out as the game went on. And this is what Jim Curtin had to say after the game about the press from New York Red Bulls causing his team troubles.
When you play Red Bull, if you pass balls lazily, and when I say lazily, it might not even be noticeable to just the common just guy watching the game. But if a ball's or girl, the guys play a ball 5 yards behind somebody, or it's to his right foot when it should lead him to his left foot. That's a second for them, and they're sprinting at you already. So now you receive the ball, and it's behind you. You pick your head up, and there's a guy on top of you. Next thing you know, it gets deflected, and now we're in a scramble. That happened 15 times in the first half because we were a little loose with the first ball. So I said it at halftime. Your pass should tell the other player where you want him to go. We were sloppy with that all night. Even on some of the passes from our center backs or from Andre, we weren't setting each other up to really turn and get at them, because every millisecond matters against these guys when they're sprinting at you and pressing and running and fighting the way they do, and they're very good at that. So yeah, the reminder was play balls that are firm, they're on the ground, and they set up the next guy. Don't just be happy to get rid of the ball. You know what I mean? So I think that part got a little bit better in the second half. Still could be even go to another level. But McGlynn's a good example. When McGlynn plays you a pass, his pass tells you where to go. It leads you exactly where he wants to go because he sees it that way. So when we get a little casual, we play balls with the outside of our foot, or we get a little lazy, all of a sudden it leads into their pressure and what they do good.
Yeah, none better than the first goal that the Union give up, right? Liam Flock tries to play a through ball into Nate Harriel, who gets in behind Tolkien, and Nate would have been one-on-one versus the goalkeeper. But Julian Carranza deflects the pass, and now here goes Red Bulls on a transition that leads to a goal, the first shot of the game, the first opportunity of the game, goal. Because the Union get caught pushing numbers forward. Pass takes a deflection, and New York Red Bulls are quick to react. I think the big takeaway from the first half, and Jim Curtin was stressing this all week, is the Union have to press and match the intensity of Red Bulls. And they didn't do that. And so maybe it's not so much that the different formation that the Union came out in confused them, gave them problems, as much of a problem as it was the Union just didn't match that intensity level. I think that's what it comes down to. And as the half went on, they got their confidence back. But you see why it's been an issue for the Union majority of the season. Starting game slow. And a team like Red Bulls that thrive when high pressing you, they're going to make you pay. And it hasn't always happened this season against the Union. It's happened a fair amount of times, but there's been moments where Inter Miami should have punished them worse than they did. The terrible teams that the Union have played this season. Orlando City, they took advantage of punishing the Union for their slow start. Columbus, and I know I'm going way back, they should have punished the Union for their slow start. Red Bulls are one of those teams that are going to make you pay. They thrive on forcing mistakes, cutting out your mistakes, and now going on the attack. And that's what they did the first 4 minutes of this game. Jim calls out lazy passing, mishit passes. And he does a good job not calling out any of his players, but there were a ton of mishit passes by Jose Martinez, by Damian Lowe. I mean, all three center backs didn't have great first halves. Damian Lowe in particular, like I said, he was just all over the field. Not really sure where he was supposed to be. The spacing was off between all three center backs. And again, I want to keep drilling this point home. To his credit, he had a much better second half. But I think he would admit that his first half wasn't good. It wasn't great. And he wouldn't blame Jim if he decided to take him off and go back to the diamond with Mikael at top. I don't think Damian would mind admitting that. But Jim let him work through it. And it paid off. It 100% paid off. We saw in the 9th minute, New York Red Bulls, and they had a chance with Kai Wagner getting caught up too high on the field. Elliott's pulled out of position because he's following the ball. He has to follow it. Now, Gazdag and Harriel are left 1v1 defending. And fortunately for the Union, New York Red Bulls can't put this ball in the back of the net. Nobody's running back post. In the 15th minute, you have Van Zayer. He has a chance because of a poor header by Jose Martinez into a dangerous area. Jack Elliott gets made by Manuel. Nobody tracks the runner of Van Zayer. Flock, Martinez are just standing around. Damian Lowe should have pushed inside when Jack Elliott stepped to the ball. And Damian Lowe gets caught sleeping there on that play. And Red Bull should have been up 2-0 in the first 15 minutes. And can the Union come back from that? Possibly because of the character of this team, but going down 2 goals in the first 15 minutes, that would have been a tough hole to dig yourself out of, especially with how well New York Red Bulls, we talked about this last episode, how well they've been defending since Troy took over as the manager. And that's a credit to his coaching style, getting this team to buy in defensively. But the Union find a way to survive in advance. A couple half chances there, like I mentioned, from Carranza and Gazdag as the first half went on. And they lived to fight another day. And I asked Jim Curtin, in the second half, Mikael Uhre comes in. Mikael hasn't scored since the LA Galaxy defeat. And a lot of fans have been upset with him because of the form he's in. And I think when we get a lot of fans arguing about Mikael Uhre, it's like, oh, it's because he's not scoring goals. And yes, I get it. As a striker, your primary goal is to score. And Mikael hasn't done that for some time. But the way the Union use their strikers, they use them to stretch the back line. And there were moments in this game against Red Bulls. As soon as Mikael came on, what's he doing? He's stretching the back line of the Red Bulls defense. And now he's opening up space for others to run into. Julian Kranza to get 1v1 inside the box. The midfield seemed too congested prior to Mikael coming in. And he comes in. Jack McGlynn gets on the ball more. He's trying to get the ball to Mikael. Sometimes he doesn't see the run. And that's been an issue all season long. That Mikael's making the right run, but his teammates aren't seeing that. And so I asked Jim Curtin about that issue.
He gave us life tonight, but I would agree. He is a striker that runs hot and cold. We want him to be a little more consistent. With his hold up play, with winning and fighting for second balls, which he did really good tonight. I think he got in behind a couple times. It is two ways. It's a two-way street because he has made good runs, and we've been a little hesitant and missed him on some through balls where he's open. So with any striker, whether it's Julian, whether it's Mikael, whether it's Chris, whether it's Quinn, they need service and they need the timing of their runs to be right, and they need the ball to be put in the right space. So it's never just one thing, but we know he can play at another level. And I thought tonight was a good first step in getting that confidence back. And he'll be a guy that we're going to need against Queretaro, to get us goals.
Yeah, we see Jack McGlynn play the ball into Mikael Uhre. Uhre's got his guy beat by space. And now here goes Julian Kranza crashing into the box. It's a good cutback ball by Mikael. And Kranza fluffs it. I believe there was a second opportunity that Mikael created to Kranza. Again, does nothing with it. You had a moment there where Mikael's making a run inside the box and Julian's selfish and doesn't pass to him. And you can see Mikael's pretty irritated. Made a 50-yard run into the box. He's free. Has his guy beat. And all it takes is one easy, simple pass by Julian Kranza. And Mikael has an opportunity to potentially put the ball in the back of the net. But it doesn't come. And you saw Mikael get irritated, like I said, with Julian. And Julian said, my bad. And that's one I'm sure, of course, they would admit that they would like to have back. But I can't stand the slander from fans on social media blaming guys, because you don't score a goal. Like, Jim made a point in the second soundbite that I played where he said, there's things that some men and women don't see, that the average fans don't see that's going on the field. And I feel like that's what happens a lot with Mikael Uhre. That's a lot of his game, is running off the ball, creating space. His job isn't to take as many touches as Julian Kranza. It's, all right, let's get Mikael into dangerous areas. Let's let him stretch to the back line. And who does this remind me of? Sergio Santos. Sergio Santos does exactly what Mikael's being asked to do. This is what the Union want from a striker in their 4-4-2 diamond. They want somebody that can hold the ball up well, somebody that's going to stretch the back line, while your other striker, your 10, can crash inside the box. And it's this formation, it's a lot of dirty work. And majority of what this team does isn't going to show up on your basic stat sheet. You've got to use advanced data to see exactly what's happening. And I guarantee you, if you looked at the advanced data, a lot of what Mikael Uhre did in this game is a positive. You heard Jim Curtin credit him. He said this is a game that is going to help him get his confidence back. And he's going to need that against Queretaro on Friday night. Another player I want to point out that had a huge game, and he's becoming one of my favorite players to watch because of how athletic he is, and that's Harriel. One of the best 1v1 defenders on this team. I think I did say in a goals breakdown video that, in my opinion, he is the best 1v1 defender. I'd put him up there with any player on this team. He's great at 1v1 defending. He reads the game so well. And he has improved so much offensively going forward with and without the ball. He's making the right runs now. He's a confident player. And of course, he's one of the most dangerous players on set pieces. And this is what Jim had to say about Nate after the game.
Nate's a winner. He scored in the last game, and I played in Bizo again because that is one position where we have two starting caliber players, that right outside back / wing back, whatever you want to call it. But he's been excellent. He's a lockdown kind of defender, 1v1. He defends forward and is really aggressive. And to your point on set pieces, because maybe he's not the tallest, right? So their best guys naturally go to Jack Elliott and Damian and Mikael if he's in there, to Glesnes, all the big guys. So what happens is now they look at him and they go, he's only 6'1", 6 foot, whatever it is, and they get maybe the fourth or fifth best marker on him. And now all of a sudden, when he can elevate like that, you go, oh, actually he might be the most dangerous guy. So that happens a lot in soccer. But he's been getting on the end of things and getting forward too in the attack in the run of play, which has been really positive and good to see.
Man, a ton of credit there from Jim Curtin towards his young right back in Nate Harriel, and he's right. He's good enough to start now. Bizer's good enough to start, and it sucks when you have two starting caliber players and you can't play them both. And you can rotate them every game to maybe bring a little bit of a different element against the opposition. But my biggest takeaway from Nate Harriel this season has been not that he can score goals off of set pieces, because we've known that. We've seen how dominant he is in the year. I mean, go back to 2021 against NYC in the Eastern Conference final, where Nate has a chance to either take the lead or tie the game up with a header off a corner, and he was close. And so we've known that for a couple of years. But it's always been a question of, can you improve offensively? And you heard Jim Curtin just praise his offensive ability. Nate's slowly but surely becoming one of my favorite players to watch because of how well-rounded he is as a player. Now, Daniel Gazdag got injured in this game. Jim Curtin said after the match that he thinks that he hyperextended it. It was a feeling that Daniel wasn't used to, and so it caught him off guard a little bit. The strength testing and the doctor said the ultrasound, all that stuff came back positive. Daniel obviously will get a MRI to get a more clear look on everything, but Jim won't speculate what the injury is. He won't give a timetable on how long Daniel Gazdag is going to be out for. So I'm sure by the time you guys listen to this podcast, Thursday's press conference will have ended. Jim will give us an update on Daniel Gazdag, and we hope for the best. Jim said after the game, too, that things change completely when Daniel's not out there. We need Daniel Gazdag. So much of what the Union do flows through Gazdag. And we can talk about this a little bit later here. Who replaces Daniel Gazdag at the 10? It's a fair question to ask, and maybe it's something I wind up asking Jim Curtin on Thursday, actually. I'm going to write that down. 100% going to ask that now. But let's go ahead and quickly talk about the Queretaro game. They went on penalties 4-3 against New England, and that sets up a rematch against the Union this Friday at 8 p.m. And Queretaro have only given up one goal in their last 3 matches since last facing the Union, as Fernando Tapia has been excellent in goal for the club. And the last time we saw these two teams face off against each other, total of 6 goals scored in the match, 5 for the Union, 1 for Queretaro. We saw 2 penalties given up. Daniel Gazdag converts both of them, gets a hat trick in this game. Jack McGlynn and Nate Harriel both scored in this game. The Union gave up a stupid late goal, and the game was 4-1 at that point. Then Jack McGlynn says, here, let me shoot from distance and add a fifth to kind of soften the blow. And this is the game. Don't forget that the Union started playing a back three. And my question is, do the Union stick with that? Because Jim Curtin, we talked about it, tried a tactical wrinkle against Red Bulls. And it didn't work. And so, does he go with the diamond? As Queretaro having experience playing against that? Possibly. Because Jim Curtin 100% gave DC United a different look when he played in the back three. DC haven't played against the Union when they've played in a back three. New York Red Bulls haven't played against the Union when they played in a back three, but even the back three that the Union played against DC United was different than what they played against Red Bull. We talked about that earlier in the podcast as well. And so does Jim Curtin try to catch Queretaro off guard by playing the diamond? We're not going to play a 3-5-2 like we did last time out against you guys. It's a fair question to ask. But I think one thing is for sure, Jesus Bueno has to start this game. He has to start this game. And he's been probably the biggest surprise this season for the Union. And I go back to my conversation with Jordan Flort when he told me, look, this guy's a good player. He's going to come good for the Union. Have faith in him. And Jordan's right, 100%. And we're seeing it now. Every single time that Bueno gets an opportunity to start, to come off the bench, he brings an energy that this team lacks at a time. And the balls on this man to say, yeah, I want to go as a fifth penalty taker again. And to convert that penalty, to not be thrown off by the antics that Cornell's doing in the goal. Beautifully hit penalty by Jesus Bueno. And we talked earlier in the podcast about all these different stories that MLS could be telling other than Messi. Jesus Bueno is a story that should be told. A guy that has came in and replaced Ale Bedoya. Like, questions should be asked. When Bedoya is fit and healthy, does he get back in the starting 11? Because I honestly do not know. I don't notice a difference with Bueno in for Bedoya. And that's not a knock on Bedoya. That just tells you how good Jesus Bueno has been playing this season. And now I'm going to get irritated again because there are so many stories, and I really don't want to get ticked off. There are so many stories in MLS that are better than, oh, Messi plays in the league. Oh, let's look at every single one of Messi's touches. Like come on, man. I'm getting so irritated, and I did not want to get back on this subject of the lazy storytelling by MLS. I really didn't. So we gotta end this podcast. We gotta end this podcast. So I'm gonna continue to run hot. So let's go back to the question I asked earlier. Who replaces Gazdag at the 10 if he can't go? Quinn Sullivan, Joaquin Torres, Jack McGlynn? It's a fair question. I think I'd go Quinn Sullivan, honestly. McGlynn can play higher up in the field. I don't think that's his best position. I don't think playing centrally that high up fits Jack McGlynn's game. He's a deep lying playmaker. You want him deep to play those long passes, to play those line splitting passes. Quinn Sullivan's going to do all the dirty work for you. So I think I'd go Quinn. So I'll ask Jim Curtin that Thursday, and you guys will have that answer, and I'll try to post that soundbite if it's a good answer by Jim on social media. But this is a hard team to beat 2 times in 16 days. And don't forget, it's a short recovery period. 3 days and another game. So it'll be interesting to see how the Union fare against Queretaro. We'll see if they learned any lessons from their last time out against the Union. But Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. Definitely longer than I anticipated, but it's definitely not a bad thing. I know, Conrad, you said you wanted the podcast to be like 60, 70 minutes long for your drive down to Chester on Tuesday night. And this should help you out a little bit for your drive Friday, if that's when you choose to listen to the podcast. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow Free Kick Pod. Obviously, you guys are listening to the podcast, so you know where to find it at the Free Kick if you guys aren't listening on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. But you guys have options wherever you guys listen to podcasts. You guys obviously found the podcast because that's how you're listening to it. And don't forget the YouTube page, youtube.com/freekickpod. And again, if you guys want me to post the press conferences on the YouTube page, I'll take the risk for you guys and hope that I don't get my credentials yanked away for doing that. But yeah, let's see what happens Friday night. Hopefully you guys are all recovered. Hopefully you guys are as loud as you were against Red Bull for Queretaro if you guys are heading to that game Friday night. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.